What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we are Dynamic Discs, Iron City. Weather is a little less than favorable outside, and we're going to talk all about putting practice today because I know with the new year, New Year's resolutions, some of you are deciding that 2024 is the year where you take your putting to a whole new level. And I think there's three common mistakes that people make when they're going through that putting practice and putting routine. And because of that, we want to go over a few of those. Before we dive in, of course, we got to ask, how are you doing today, Dakota? Are you having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
Now, like we said in the intro, there is a multitude of reasons that people will be looking to improve their putting game because perhaps it's a weakness that you've had for a long time, or you just have a little more free time or availability because of job responsibilities changing, things like that in the new year. And so because of that, I hear people all the time, this is where I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day doing this. I'm going to make 100 putts a day. And we build these daily routines and we think that if we just simply do that, that's all we need to do and our putting is going to be fixed overall. But I think there are a multitude of mistakes that people make even stepping into that process, which is going to create this, we'll call it the wall of I promise. What does that wall mean? When we're playing on a course or we're playing with friends, what you'll often hear are something like, I promise that disc normally flips up. I promise that I usually make those putts. I promise I have never thrown a shot that bad before. I promise I'm usually like a 950 rated player, but I guess I'm just playing like 800 rated golf today. This wall of I promise comes from building poor practice routines so that while we think we're developing a skill, it never actually translates to the course. And putting is probably one of the places that we see that the most. So we've got three tips, but I want to give a little preface that is, why do we practice putting, or what are we looking to accomplish during putting practice? And what I would say is what we're trying to accomplish during putting practice is not seeing necessarily putts go in the basket. Putting practice is all about teaching yourself and memorizing a competent putting stroke that is repeatable so that when you're on the course, if things are going south or they're not going in and you're not getting the results you're looking for, if you build the time practicing that stroke, you're going to be able to identify it and get back to it. 2 weeks ago, I was hanging out with three friends, Josh, Dakota, and Dylan, and we were playing around. A new friend, Kyle, was actually there, and they were all playing doubles. I was playing mulligan man, and so I stepped up and I had two putts available to go ahead and drain from like 30 feet. I throw my first putt and I'm feeling pretty good about it, and it hits the right side of the chains and then it falls out. The whole crowd is just like, oh man, that's a bummer. And I turn and I look at my friend Josh and I was like, it was a little right. While Dylan and Kyle may have been watching it and been like, wow, that was so unlucky. That was a spit out. I knew in my heart of hearts, it was a little right. So I tried to adjust on the next putt and I ended up a little left, but I also putted so hard out of frustration that I ended up hitting through the chains, hit the pole, and it bounced out on the front side. Now, it could be argued that if you hit the pole, then that is like a proper spit out, but I would look at it as I was putting too hard for that basket to receive the putt. And also I was on the left side of the basket, which is weak side chains. Now, just to show this example one more time, we've all seen good putts go in the basket and we've seen bad putts also go in the basket. My job is to take this putter and put it as close to the pole as I can on that was high left side, which is not a great place to be putting as a right-handed putter. However, if I'm able to put it midway up the basket on the pole, right down the middle, these are good putts. Most of those being right where we wanted on the pole. But once again, I had a putt go right here. Traditionally, yes, I hit the basket, but not a great putt. We've even obviously seen putts like grab one chain on the right side and fall in, and we've seen putts grab one chain on the right side and fall out. And yet for some reason, maybe it's like a mental failure, a mental weakness, we want to look at the putts that hit one chain on the right side and fall in and tell ourselves, I'm so good at putting. That was incredible. And yet when we throw the exact same putt and it hits right side chains and fall out, we're looking at ourselves thinking, how could I be so unlucky with these spit outs today? Call what it is, disc golfers. We want to have our cake and eat it too. So how do we fix that so that it's not leaving it up to chance, hitting weak side, hitting random one-offs and hoping that the 50-50 ball rolls our way and the disc falls in the basket rather than falling out of the basket? putting practice. So here are the 3 most common mistakes that I see people do when it comes to putting. And the first is before you even step up and start throwing putts, it's what you're putting with. I've seen people say that they want to be really serious about their putting practice, but if I go to where they practice putting, it looks like they're doing this exactly. They're walking through a use section. They're like, that's an AVR. That's a harpoon. That's a dagger. That is an AVR. This is a method. And this is a judge. It's a Marshall. All right, cool. I got these putters. Let's go practice putting. Now, I've said it here on the channel before, and while I go back and forth on sort of do all putters fly the same inside the circle, on these shorter putts, which is what people should be looking at, I mean, from right here, I am 1, 2, 3, 4. So about 12 to 15 feet. And these should be a gimme range putt. These should be ones that I'm making all the time. I can have a very developed and consistent stroke. But the thing is, having a wide array of putters that I'm practice putting with, it's going to feel different in my hand every time. And so rather than getting the same confidence and the same repeatability that I'm looking to carry with me to the course, I'm having to adjust how my hand fits in these putters. So there, for instance, the dagger being significantly deeper than the AVR that I putted with on the first putt. So because I'm deeper, I'm having to subconsciously give my hand more pop, which is going to make the putt stroke look different. And right there, I over adjust. So I went back to a shallow putter versus the dagger. And I'm relieving them low because I knew that I over popped on the one. So I'm making adjustments because while the stroke should remain the same, I'm subconsciously changing what I'm doing in order to fit the different putters that I'm using. So how do we solve this? Because I know for some of you, it's not out of a lack of desire to have the same putter. This is just what you're working with. And while I would say it's more effective to get out and practice your stroke regardless of whether you have a full stack, I just wanted to start here because switching to being able to have all of one mold, especially having one mold in the same plastic in the same weight, is going to take that consistency you're getting from practice and just amplify it to a whole nother level. For instance, I'm switching to Wizards this year, and at the time of this video, I'm still waiting on a package to arrive that has a bunch of Wizards in it. So here at the local shop, we actually have 4S Wizards, which are pretty gummy, but the only other 5 Wizards that I own, while Wizards, are all an entirely different plastic. I have glow plastic. I've got Diamond, which is their premium plastic. I have a Glow Double S, which is different than even the Glow that this one was. I have Pure Whites, and then I have a Racer Blend. So while all 5 of these feel like, all 6 of these even feel like Wizards, because they are, there is a difference in even how the plastic feels in my hand. This is 174 grams. This is 170. This is 176. This is 174, 176, and 175. So this one is 5 grams lighter, which is going to feel like a difference when I go to give it pop and it really soars out of my hand. So the goal is once I land on a plastic blend, which we're going to be deep diving into all the plastic blends next Tuesday once the package arrives, I want to make sure that to really amplify that putting practice, that I'm taking that to the next level. For those of you tuning in, hopefully you're going to notice that there's not any ads running during the actual length of this video, and that is thanks to the Birdie Fam, the sponsor of today's video. The Birdie Fam is my Patreon community, and it is a community of disc golfers looking to improve one stroke at a time. While we're largely active on Discord, we actually have announced and we're putting up registration very soon for our in-person gathered event, Birdie Fam Takes Over Birmingham, where people from all across the country are going to come to Birmingham for a weekend. We're going to play a bunch of golf, have a bunch of CTPs, prizes, giveaways, doubles. It's a fantastic opportunity for these folks that have been in the room chatting with one another online the entire time to come physically into the room together, onto the course together, so they can meet deep in those connections. Because I think that it's so hard to be the one struggling with, oh man, I only throw 250 feet and I just feel like everyone around me in my club throws way farther than that. And first off, that's usually not true. Maybe you're just playing with a certain group of people that do throw farther than that. So being able to have a group where you have a sounding board, whether we're talking disc dying, disc selection, stroke, improving your technique, whatever it may be, the Birdie Fam is a great place for this. this. We also have an exclusive podcast directly for the Birdie fam. They get discounts to merchandise and drops over at Foundation Discs. That's also where I do form review. So many perks to the Birdie fam, and it starts at as low as $5 a month for those looking to join. So make sure you head over to patreon.com/Robbie C Disc Golf. There's going to be a link in the description below. Thank you to the Birdie fam for making an ad-free video possible, because without them, we really wouldn't be able to do what we're doing today full time. So that's the tool setup. The second setup that I think people are messing up is focusing on fixed parts of their practice putting routine. So we'll just call this right here fixed issues. Those fixed issues come in two different ways. The first is putting for a fixed amount of makes. Once again, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but just because the disc goes in the basket doesn't mean that it was actually a good putt. So if I'm stepping up and I'm telling myself that I'm going to make 100 putts a day, I could actually, towards the end of it, if I'm feeling fatigued because I'm not used to putting that many times, or I had an off day and I actually end up throwing close to, let's say with a 50% putting success, I have to throw 200 putts in order to make 100 putts. By the end of that, my arms are going to be feeling that fatigue. My fingers are going to be feeling that fatigue. And so I'm going to start throwing some bad putts that are going to go in the basket. And what are those teaching me? Not putts that I want to be able to use on the course. It's going to teach me bad habits that will make it even harder for me to identify what a good putt looks like when I'm missing putts out there on the course. The second issue is fixed distances. I hear people say, oh man, I really struggle with 10 footers. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to practice 10 footers for the whole month of January. So they stand out and they mark these out and they're like, yeah, 10-foot putt. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10. They're sitting here and they're ready for these 10-foot putts and they're like, wow, I have these dials. Now, in theory, if you're really good at making 10-foot putts and you make an adjustment to an 11 or 12-foot putt, it should be about the same putt because it's not barely going in on the 10-foot putt. So we should be able to make a little adjustment. But in my mind, if you're only practicing those fixed 10-foot putts, then you're missing out on what happens when you have a 12-foot putt. All of a sudden, that repeatability, your mind is going to look at it and say that it is a different putt than what you practiced. And therefore, that translation of success is going to be a lot harder because you only practice those really, really short fixed putts. So the adjustment for these actually comes in combining the two together and making it so that I'm not practicing a fixed amount of makes, but I'm working on a certain time slot. And that's going to adjust day to day. Some days I'm going to need to putt for 15 minutes. Some days I'm going to need to putt for 30. If I'm putting, let's say I tell myself that I'm going to putt for 15 minutes that day, but after 5 to 10 minutes, which if you're putting on a regular basis, you really are going to develop this sort of stroke motion that comes really familiar to you. And that's all putting practice is supposed to be, is fine-tuning that stroke so you're knowing what it looks like. And then once it feels good, this is hard for people to do, but stop. If you tell yourself, even on a fixed time schedule, oh, I have to putt for 30 minutes every day, but you go for 10 minutes and that putt is feeling really good, and then you just start messing around with it. You start tweaking things. Suddenly, you're going to add in some fatigue. You're going to add in some sort of small hitch or hang up because you putted for too long, and that could be your downfall for the next week or so because you think, oh yeah, I'm working, I'm practicing, this is great. But you end up practicing not your good stroke, which then leads to cementing bad form, bad putting stroke, bad confidence, and then we're in trouble. So utilize that time for as much as you need to. Sure, start out with an initial goal, but setting out like I'm going to practice for 10 to 15 minutes and I'm going to practice my 10 to 15 foot putts. So there's a range and I'm coming in and out and I'm adjusting that way on the fly. I'm not just locked in. The putter marker is set and I'm just putting this stroke over and over again. I'm actually switching up what I'm doing, which actually segues us beautifully to the third thing. The last one is probably one that I'm most passionate about, and it is people who get fixated on practicing the exact spot, the exact setting, the exact style over and over again. And if you've ever been on a disc golf course, I don't know if you're playing park style golf out in Arizona or if you're playing woods golf up in New England. We cannot guarantee that the green is going to feel the same every single time we putt. We can't guarantee that the surface that we have to putt across is going to be the same every time we putt. We could have a low ceiling on a putt. You could have a tree right behind your lie. You could have a bush right behind your lie. You could have a tree next to your lie. These are all factors that can change how you have to putt, and we need to be prepared for these. This is why you'll often hear me say in my practice putting videos that we've talked about here on the channel, make sure you're switching it up. If you're predominantly a straddle guy and you're spread out like this facing the camera, make sure you shift those legs back. That way, in case there comes a moment where I don't have the freedom to spread my legs like this and have this proper straddle, I'm prepared with the staggered stance because I practice it in my putting routine. I also wouldn't spend a ton of time on this. Maybe if you're practicing every day, once every other week, but spend that time just practicing super weird putts. You can hit them with a couple scuba salutes. Definitely probably need to practice that being a foundation guy. You can go the Pete Collins route with some forehand putts. Probably need to practice that one too. If you're more of a push putter, then you can practice your spin putt. If you are a spin putter, you can practice your push putt. You can practice from a knee. You can practice turbos. You can tell I don't spend a lot of time practicing my weird putts, which is why I usually, if I have to switch up what I'm doing on the putting green, I struggle sometimes. And especially if you are someone who doesn't have a ton of distance, putting is where you're going to make up strokes on people. So the worst feeling in the world is when you know you have the opportunity to make up strokes on people, but you're on the putting green and your putting toolbox is not developed enough so that you can actually capitalize. So those farther throwers than you are not going to lose any strokes to you because you're not going to make your putt and you know they're not going to make their putt while you have the opportunity. You just didn't have the toolbox or the tool prepped and practiced enough to be able to capitalize. With all that being said, today is January 18th when it's dropping. I would love to know in the comments down below how many of you so far in January have committed to a practice putting routine. You're trying to work on those things. And do any of these sound like you or sound like things you've been practicing? And have you noticed these struggles or the I promise wall really coming into reality as you've tried to translate this already 3 weeks of practice to the course? It's not that I want to remove excuses from people, but I just want to make sure that if you're going to put in the time to practice, that we can help make putting much more of a transferable skill, because putting, for some reason, we put this like mental block on it of how hard it's supposed to be. And yet, if I handed you like literally any random object and you have some connection to athleticism, the body knows what to do. If I handed you this box and I said, hey, can you take this dynamic duel and toss it into the basket, but you can only use one hand, you would cornhole putt this thing and you would have no problem sort of tossing it directly at the basket. And yet we get to putting and our brain turns off. We lose all natural flow of what we're trying to do. When you're practicing your putt, you're just trying to find that natural stroke and do what you can to feel repeatable and get consistent power and spin on the disc so that you have this tool honed in to aim it and put it in the basket as regularly as possible. Looking forward to seeing what you guys are saying in the comments. And I'm going to be looking to see if I can provide any extra help in the comments as you guys are watching this. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.